Hello, hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Today we're talking about the strong black woman narrative and could it actually be hurting us? And I'm actually talking with a fellow coach, colleague, guest who will be joining me in just a moment. And if you are listening and you know another black woman who might benefit from this conversation, then come on in, invite people in. Hey there, B. Martin Realty, Bennett Piercy. Welcome. So, this conversation has been coming up in my circles here for some time. We have been, and especially over the last week, we look at the levels of burnout, and I'm looking at the levels of burnout. A lot of what I talk about in my communities is burnout, and so a lot of what we talk about is, this thing of burnout and mom life, and especially during the pandemic, and what it's like to have all of these hats, but have to give the appearance of being strong all the time. And this is a narrative that is, it comes way before the pandemic, but I think it's been magnified in this case, right? And so I've been having these conversations, and I wanted to actually have a dialogue today with. So I'm going to bring her up now and introduce her. Yeah, so introduce yourself. Let the folks know who you are. Hey, Mental Health Over Stigma, I see you.
Yes, I'm Natasha Hardy from Hardy Life, because yes, you do deserve a Hardy life. And I teach women age 50 and above to break free of their self-limiting beliefs that's preventing them from igniting their heart's desire. So we want women age 50 plus to ignite their heart's desire. And I have a high tea that comes up every month. So February, we're talking about mindsets. So this definitely is parallel to what you're talking about, is this mind. We have these mindsets that don't support us, right? So what mindset works? And so I'm open to us getting rid of that stigma. And I think what you're saying about the strong black woman thing, right? Because people are like, oh, I'm a strong black. I went through that whole thing. I'm a strong black woman. I'm a strong black woman, right? Yes, I'm 58 years young, I like to say. And I find that a lot of times we have been taught, oh, you got to be strong, or you got to be this, or because life is so tough, and you got to be 10 times better than this one because you're black, and you got to be eight times better than this one, or you can't fail, or you can't demonstrate this mindset that you can't show like this. Never let them see you sweat. I know there was a whole thing the whole time I remember playing this in my head. Don't let them see you sweat. Don't let them see you sweat.
Yeah.
Don't flinch. Don't.
That's right.
Poker face, all these things. And what we're doing, and I said this one time before, there was a time where I could literally swallow my feelings away, like little layers down. And what we do is we bury all that stuff, and then it sits in our body, and it becomes toxic. It becomes cancerous. It becomes like a powder keg. Somebody says the wrong thing or whatever, we explode, and then you got a chip on your shoulder, or you walking around all like, because you have this persona that I gotta protect myself, or I gotta come off like can't nobody walk all over, whatever that is.
Yeah, I think that it's such a generational thing, this whole strong black woman narrative that's been portrayed over the years. But I think at some point it was necessary. It was necessary because, back in the day, we held the family together, right? And so
there was a sense that if we couldn't break, our hearts, we couldn't break. We had to be strong for our men, be strong for our children, no matter what was going on. But and I think internally that gives us strength, but at the same time, as that's been portrayed over the years, it damages us because it creates a circumstance where we're not able to be fully expressed. And I know, like in my upbringing, I was brought up in a home that I experienced domestic violence. My mom, I was a child survivor of domestic violence, and it was what goes on in the house stays in the house. So
Right.
there's no safe space to express. And even as a child, I experienced depression. I mean, looking back at the time, I didn't, I couldn't identify it as that, right? But as a physician and looking back on all of my history of and my spiritual journey even, and my journey like working through doing the deep work that I do with NLP and hypnosis, I've uncovered a lot of these old conversations. And it a lot of that stems from it. I look at my mom too, that strong black woman. I gotta be the strong black woman. I gotta hold it down. I gotta, you never, like you said, never let them see you sweat, right? If you, in our community, the physician community, if you cry, you're weak. If you say you're tired, you're weak. If you need to take a day off, or if you want to be a mom, you're weak. I mean, it's crazy, right? So we don't have a safe space, and that's where it can be damaging, because we're so expected. Even our partners, even our men, they look at us and they admonish us and admire us because of the strength, but that puts pressure, because then when you have that kind of pressure to be strong, then there's no safe space to just let go and cry and melt and do the things that you need to do. And there becomes a fear of vulnerability that happens as well. So I think that that's the place where it's damaging.
I mean, you've touched on so many different points here, and what you're saying is so profound to me, because I too, like, I remember being in the household with my parents when my parents were fighting, and I would get between them, you know, um, and not knowing how that impacted me. I mean, you speaking about it, I'm like, I don't really know how that impacted me, but I do know that even for me, there's been times I'm around people, and it's very triggering to me, like unnerving for me when I
Mhm.
see people. Um, what is it when they verbally joust each other, and they're just in
Right,
fun, right? But it creates anxiety for me. I feel very
right.
worked up by
Mhm.
it. And when you talked about holding that persona, yesterday I was in this group coaching session, and we talked about why don't you step forward, and why procrastination is a concern. And I raised my hand, and the guy coached me, and he said, what's holding you back? And I was telling him, oh, feeling unworthy. And he was like, well, where does that come from? And he coached me down to a point where I was like, well, I remember when I was a latchkey kid, and I was home with my brother, who monopolized the television. He monopolized the food. He monopolized everything. He was 2 years older than me, and nobody was there from the time we got home until an adult got home to navigate him to, and he always teased me. So, I was talking about that. And I remember one time we were struggling with the phone, and he hit me with the phone in my head. Well, back then the phone was heavy, and
Right,
yeah, it was heavy. And so the barrette broke and went into my
right.
head, and
Oof.
cameras couldn't get out. I had to have an operation. And
Mhm.
the conversation drilled down to me never feeling safe with my brother in the house.
Mhm.
After that. My parents never brought us together to work that out, because they
Right.
didn't know that. And then I never felt safe at home. So I was always out away from home when nobody was there. And so there was a worthiness conversation that I didn't deserve protection or
Mhm.
safety. And that
Mhm.
has impacted. So imagine how many people are walking around with quote unquote safety mechanisms they've created from childhood. I mean, you know this, you
Mhm.
work with people. I know that
Right.
I coach people, but
Mhm.
it's like these safety mechanisms that we've implanted and don't, and have a blind spot to, and not able to really see that that is the reason why I'm procrastinating. That's the reason why I don't take on new tasks. That's the reason why I don't, because of something that you put in your brain, which is a safety mechanism to protect you, and you still walking around protected.
Yeah, and so it's very interesting. I was in a conversation last night in the rooms of the clubhouse, and we were talking about the bringing creativity into healthcare, into medicine, being creative as doctors, and that affecting our authenticity, like our authenticity. And one of the things that came up was the fact that when, especially as Black women, double minorities per se, when we sometimes we enter spaces where we're the only one, right? We're the only one. So then it's like we gotta represent. You know what I'm saying? We gotta represent for our sisters, right? And there's a comment here I don't want to miss. Being strong Black women at times creates a culture where we don't ask for support, which is going against healing and sisterhood. That is exactly right. So we don't have the safe space because we're the only one. We're different. It's almost like the whole idea of code switching, right? When there's a code switching that becomes natural for us. And there's a lot of memes about it. There's a lot of reels and TikToks about it, and it's funny, but it's real, and it's a function of not being in a safe space, having the safe space to emote. Well, when do we have that safe space? We got to start creating it. We have to start creating it for each other and normalizing that we are human. You know, we put on these capes and, you know, we wear like 15 hats: mom hat, businesswoman hat, you know, professional hat, spouse hat, you know, it's all kind leader, community leader hat. There's so many hats that we wear, and then we're in the background trying to keep it together. When do we get time for us? When do we have that sisterhood where we could just be like, "Ooh, girl, my son today, you know, I need some mom
Yeah.
love." Like, when do we have that time? Because there's a lot of shaming in our community, you know, and there's a lot of shaming amongst moms. We have to look, and then don't talk, let's not start talking about social media and how we compare ourselves to other people. And I always tell my clients, don't be comparing your insides to other people's outsides, because you don't know what's going on behind that camera, right? So I think it's important to have the raw conversations of what's really going on, so that we can begin to normalize our humanity, because it really boils down to the dehumanization of Black women when we have this strong Black woman narrative. It boils down that we are dehumanizing ourselves when we carry that on, and we have to begin to allow ourselves the grace and the space of being human.
You know, that is so beautifully put, and you are right. One of the main things that I share about the Hot High Tea is that it's a safe space for women to come and be authentic and raw, right? And what I realized in doing the Hot High Tea, people may come multiple times before they actually get on there, but women got on there and cried. They have shared about loneliness, or being by themselves, or not, you know, just feeling alone and not feeling like they had anybody to reach out to.
Right.
Or the other thing that I find that I experience with a lot of Black women is the inability to tap into their humanness, their humanity, right? They've been wearing this hard thing so long that it's very difficult for them to tap into. Like, you can ask them a question and they'll talk about Jane, Jimmy, Bob, Peter, but they will never, you say, so how do you feel about that? And, you know, I've done this with women that have families, and they're like, oh, well, my husband, da 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 da, or my child, da 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 da, and I noticed this with my child. But for them to tap in to themselves is a real challenge for them. And that's why I love the, because they get to hear other women tap in, and they learn. Even if they don't participate, there's a learning in that. And and to your point about the shaming in the community, there is a shaming from people who may not even be walking your walk, right? So I'm not married. I've never been married, right? So I can't, how am I going to shame you about marriage stuff when I don't know anything about it, right? And I had a quote unquote, I'm gonna use that term loosely, a friend who I took on my granddaughter almost 4 years ago. Became a single parent again. And my granddaughter had some isms. Like I had to go get her tested. She had dyslexia. I had no idea why she couldn't hardly read, write, or whatever. She had some things. And I had to do all this work. And it was a huge adjustment for her and myself. And I was constantly beating myself up because I didn't know how to, quote unquote, fix the situation or fix her or struggle getting her on point. And I had this conversation with a couple of friends of mine that I've known for many years. And I mean, this guy was shaming me for not buying my granddaughter a Mac computer. And I was like, she don't need a Mac computer. She's 12. What does she need a Mac computer for? And like question me like, well, do you guys get money for her? And what are you doing? I don't see her. She don't got this and she don't got, like, that's not my child, first of all.
Yeah.
It's not my child. I'm taking her on and working with her, but I don't have to give her I give her what she needs and then some. She gets a lot of things, and I decide as a parent if I feel like I want to spread her money out to get her into swimming and dance and gymnastics and acting and this and that, then instead of spending it all on one computer, then that's what I'm going to do, because she needs diversity. And then you got someone else who's saying, well, you need to review your past because you may be PTS. You may have PTSD. And I'm like, review your past and deal with your stuff.
Right. So yeah, one of the things that you said that I think was really important was, you talked about in the high tea how women may come and they may come multiple times, but they don't say anything. And there's an innate fear, we talk about the being vulnerable. There is almost an innate fear of being vulnerable. And when I look at that, I'm looking purely from even my career upbringing as a physician, that vulnerability again translates in a lot of us to weakness. And we have to begin to rehumanize, like you said, rehumanize ourselves and allow and uncollapse vulnerability and weakness. And furthermore, I think that, and this is just from what I've gotten from clients over the years, I think that feeling of vulnerability goes back to safety. Like I had someone say to me once, I don't know, I don't want to let go of this fear because if I am, I'm exposed, or I don't want to let go of this anger because if I'm not angry, then I'm letting someone off the hook for something bad that happened. I don't want to let go of this sadness because who am I without this sadness, or who am I without this guilt, or who am I without this hurt, right? So there are people out there that are our ladies who we're protecting ourselves because in the past, there have been things that have been done, but now we can be responsible for bringing our own humanity, for uncollapsing vulnerability and weakness, for uncollapsing vulnerability and, safety, right? Because we can be vulnerable and still have the capacity to make decisions and set boundaries that will keep us safe. It is possible to do that. But I think if who haven't had the experience of the condition of doing that, if you haven't learned or been taught that, or if you haven't been shown or modeled that, then it becomes difficult to believe that it's possible. So I think one of the things that will help us to, as a community, begin to shed the narrative that and here's the thing, we are strong Black women by nature. We don't have to carry a narrative or a look. We are strong. Mm-hmm. And I think the extra weight of the narrative is what's damaging, not the fact that we're strong, but the extra weight of the narrative of having to be that way. But when you shed having to be any kind of way and just allow yourself to be and connect. And this, to your point, Natasha, you said earlier that you find that a lot of Black women have trouble connecting into that emotion. It's because in a lot of cases, well, this is, conjecture, right? In a lot of cases, what I've seen in the people I coach and myself and my colleagues is that that emotion has to be shoved down in order to get through the day. Let's talk about single moms. I'm a single mom. Like you said, you just became a single mom as well. I'm a single mom. I gotta run this business. I gotta raise this boy. I gotta, like there's all kinds of things I gotta do. I gotta facilitate this call. I gotta go, all of these things that I have to
Oh,
do. But I
laundry,
can't go
grocery,
from call to
food,
call or
dinner.
yeah, groceries. Yep, all of that, right? All the things, all the things. But you know what? If I get tired or if I get emotional, it's inherent that I don't want my son to see me crying. I don't want my son to see me, a particular way. I want my son to see me as the mom who can, take care of him. Like he's not supposed to be taking care of me. Like that's the narrative, right? So, and I imagine in single moms, it can be that way. And any mom, it can be that way, right? Not just single moms, but especially. So we shove this emotion down. Doctors walk out of a room. We just gave a patient bad news, right? Got to walk out of the room, pull it together, walk in the next room like nothing happened in the last room, and like we are happy-go-lucky and ready to see this next patient. I'm sure with therapists it's the same way, with attorneys it's the same way, with any professional, coaches it's the same way. You come off of a coaching call drained, but you got the next coaching call and you got to be ready to give of yourself. So then whatever emotion comes up that's triggered in the interaction, you have to push it down, right? So that I believe is a lot of why it gets difficult to connect into that vulnerability, into that emotion. So
Yeah.
yeah, we got a lot of conversations to have about this. I'm looking, it's coming to the top of the hour. Y'all know I do this conversation from 12:30 to 1 because I have me a client next. So, but
But that
Natasha,
by
it's,
quickly. That time went by quickly.
I
Yes.
know it's such an important topic, and I really appreciate you having the conversation with me today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to come back and just to even share that the women too, there's a lot of shame, also shaming in this process. And one of the things I do with my client, like you said, is I have them look at that Brene Brown um, TED Talk on vulnerability. Because
Yeah,
when you ask women what does vulnerability mean to them, a lot of them say weakness. And it really is a superpower.
right. It
Vulnerability.
really is. It really is. And that's a future topic. And I think there's lots of topics that could come out of this. And so, we'll connect in and see when that next conversation will be. But I just want to thank everyone who joined us today. I see you, and just continue to join me and join us as these conversations evolve. I love to talk about all things brain behavior and the unconscious mind, especially relevant to mental health in the Black community for men and women, for us Black men and Black women. So I appreciate you, Natasha, for joining us today. And I will be letting you know when we are when it's time for us to do another one of these dialogues. All right. Thank you for
All
joining
right,
us.
thank you. And let me just say, join me on Clubhouse. I'm about to be on Clubhouse today talking about pleasures. What's your pleasure?
All right. All right. All right. Very cool. See ya.
Have a great one.
You too. Uh, All right, y'all. Well, thank you for showing up today for today's conversation. I'll be posting it in IGTV, of course, so you can replay it and share it. Yep, I'll be on the Clubhouse as well at Dr. Maisha. Come check me out. And if you want to join the club, Remap Your Mind on the Clubhouse, you can do that as well. And of course, if you want to learn more about what I do in this realm of NLP and hypnosis, if you want that deep personal work for yourself to start to shed that fear of vulnerability, to shed that narrative or the narrative of what you have to be and start being who you want or choose to be, right? If you want to do that, you could just message me. You could also go to the link in my bio and check out all the programs. If you want to learn NLP, if you want to learn hypnosis, if you're a coach and you're like, oh, this is a good tool to have, go ahead and jump into the link in the bio. You can learn about the upcoming trainings this spring. So thank you guys again for joining, and I definitely look forward to the next one. All right. Y'all take care. Namaste.